It's late July 2020 and I'm finally getting around to editing together my Desert Brutality 2020 match video that was filmed back at the beginning of February. There's a few reasons for this. One, putting together major videos like this is quite a bit of work that I need time to focus on. Secondly, a few of the stage videos were missing and I was unable to find backups or other shooters that had copies of my runs on those stages. So unfortunately, there's two stages missing, one of my retro light run and one of my armored plus P runs, so you won't be able to see the side-by-side comparison. So something to keep in mind as you watch this video is the 2 weeks preceding this match were absolutely exhausting for me. SHOT Show was the week before this event, and part of SHOT Show 2020 was, of course, preparing for the What Would Stoner Do debut at the Brownells booth at SHOT Show. So had to put a lot of time and energy into getting things ready for that and the prototypes ready to display at the show. And I also had to put a lot of time and energy into getting the range prepared for the match. I was the match director for Desert Brutality 2020. Carl's kind of the ideas guy and brings the media and a lot of the interest in the event. And I'm the admin and logistics guy that makes sure that everything happens and it's run as a formal, on schedule, competitive event. So you'll never shoot your best match when you're running it yourself. You don't have the same match experience as other competitors. You're shooting on a compressed schedule while you're already tired and your mind's in 100 different directions trying to make sure the event's running properly. So with all that in mind, here is my match video and commentary, and hopefully you enjoy it. For my retro light run, I'm using my Colt 723 style build with Brownells 4X retro scope. From this first position, the shooter must get 2 hits each on each of these 4 white targets. The paper targets must be hit before entering the trench. They require 2 hits each to neutralize. From this position, the shooter engages the steel targets again with 2 hits each from between these 2 sticks. I can see the heads of the paper targets from this trench, so I engage them before exiting. I can clear my rifle on the move and sling it before transitioning to pistol. From this first trench, the shooter is only supposed to engage the first steel target with pistol. Even though I've read the stage description multiple times, on the clock, with everything going on running the match and pushing through these stages, I lose track of this and I have to be reminded to engage only the first target and move on and engage only the next subsequent target from each of these trenches. My retro light pistol is a SIG 226 made in West Germany. I deliberately don't practice with this pistol between Brutality events, and I'm using it in my retro light run first to help proof out the stages to see if they are doable. Moving on to engage the spinner, I reload with a full magazine. This spinner was a point of consternation for many shooters. The presentation on it is more difficult than typically encountered on a spinner. It's 15 yards away and uphill, meaning that the presentation of the plates when the shooter can deliver the most energy is not quite what it normally would be if you were level in line with it. What this means is that the rounds aren't delivering as much energy to the targets as they normally would if you shoot the plates in their normal presentation. I got really close to rotating it there. The problem I have is that I'm shooting this pistol too fast. I'm used to shooting red dot equipped Glocks at this point, and I'm shooting faster than I can get a clean 100% sight picture. So after those difficulties, I go to 1 hit per presentation, trying to make consistent hits. I know I'm going to be running really low on ammunition. I have 1 extra magazine buried in my pants pocket, and if I run out, I'm going to get a plus 60-second penalty. Slowing down, I make the hits consistently enough to rotate the target with the last round out of my last magazine.
1-6-3.
Hey, it wasn't just me, Fagan.
Unload and show clear, shooter.
What's up with that, huh?
Less boulots.
For my Armored Plus P run, I'm using my KE Arms KE-15 shooting team rifle with Vortex Crossfire Red Dot and the micro magnifier. On this portion, you'll see how much faster I am transitioning target to target with the red dot and making subsequent shots with the rifle that has significantly less muzzle rise than the 723 build. At the distances and target presentations we had at Desert Brutality 2020, a red dot is king versus anything with magnification or limited eye relief. The handgun I'm using is my KE-19 Charlie Stealth Special with the Aimpoint Acro. The Aimpoint Acro was relatively new to me at this match, and I'm still getting used to it. The temperature at this point of the day was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. I can barely feel my fingers by the end of the stage, and that's why you'll see me miss more on the spinner than I normally would. I'm really jerking the trigger because my hands are so cold and I'm losing fine motor control. But with 27 rounds in the gun and a red dot, the spinner is much easier to rotate. In retro light, I'm second place on this stage. In armored, I am 6th place on this stage. In the overalls, I was 7th with my armored division run, and 17th overall with my retro light run. Only 18 shooters out of the entire match were able to complete this stage. This was my first stage of the match, shooting the Casarta drill in retro light division. It was about 30 degrees when we shot this first stage, and something I didn't consider until I shot the stage was that the kettlebell had been out overnight in freezing conditions, and that made my fingers incredibly cold shooting the stage, to the point where I was having a hard time pulling the trigger by the time the stage was over.
Come on, Russ! Wheels, Russell!
Step on the gas!
So this is a 62-pound kettlebell, and one of the things that's different about the Casarta drill this year is that we didn't have to go prone. All the rounds were shot standing, but the kettlebell was a bit heavier than it has been in the past. So, like I said, this was my first stage of the match, first stage of the day, and I'm going into this relatively well rested. Each of my throws is pretty strong, and I didn't really feel like I was getting fatigued too badly while shooting my retro light division run. The cumulative effect of all the days of setting up and running the match and shooting all these stages before, and the 2 weeks of prep and SHOT Show and everything else before the match really took its toll on me when it came time to shoot my Armored plus P division run the first day of the Armored plus P match. The shooting on this portion of the stage really isn't that hard. They're full-size IPSC steel at 100 yards at the start, then collapsing down to 50 yards. It's really about just not getting too tired as you're throwing the kettlebell and getting it all done under par time. It always seems like the last throw of the Casarta drill is like a very minimal one. Like if a couple throws had gone better earlier in the stage, it wouldn't even have been necessary. Because I'm running the match, the first day of the Scout and Armored Division match, I shot all 3 of my required stages back to back to back so I could get them out of the way and then focus on running the match. So this is my second stage of the first day of Armored, and it's just not going to go very well. I'm going to run out of gas about halfway through throwing the kettlebell, and it's very rare for me to encounter a set of circumstances during a stage where like I have to will my body through continuing. Mentally, I was still there, but there was that little whisper in the back of my head going, why am I doing this? This is really unpleasant. I have the match to run. I don't need to do this. But I kept going. I think about the time you see me get to the 3rd stick, is when I'm going to really start feeling the effects of the fatigue. Fortunately, the rifle fell over on the bipod there. Bipod had a little too much swivel in it, so the center of gravity would shift and it would roll over sometimes. If the bipod was locked, picking the rifle back up from the bipod is more effective. But unfortunately, that's not something I can correct during the stage. Another thing that's a bit different versus the 2 GACM matches in Tucson, where we do the same type of stage all the time. In fact, we ran it in December, I believe, before this match occurred, and I just crushed it, was the higher altitude of Chino Valley combined with the cold air definitely affected my respiratory function more than it has been in Tucson at a closer to sea level altitude and not nearly as cold as it is up in Chino Valley.
Last time you gotta do this weekend. Push.
Joe's in full drill sergeant mode with me, pushing me through the stage. Does help a bit, but half the time I'm not hearing him because I'm focused on pushing through what's going on myself. And you can see I'm taking a bit longer to stabilize and make sure that I get a good throw, because a weak throw or the kettlebell just like kind of rolling out of your hands is worse than taking a little bit longer to set up and do a solid throw.
You're almost there. Let's go. Push it. You hit.
Starting to feel my legs cramp up. Every motion is painful, and I'm really having to focus to push through the final iterations of this stage.
You got this. Let's go. You got this. There we go. Give me one more hit, shooter.
Oh, and the magnifier flipped back into place at some point when my rifle fell over, so I was going a little cross-eyed shooting that last target. So each stick the shooter crosses is minus 15 seconds, so that's why the times are what they are. And you'll see the bonus column there. I was second in my retro light run, and in my armored run, I was 14th. This was the only stage of the match where my retro light run was faster than my armored plus P run because of the overwhelming physical aspect of it. In the overalls, I was 11th with my retro light run, and I was 44th with my armored run. On this stage, the shooter must hold their pistol in one hand, use the sights through the vision port of the shield, and neutralize each one of these auto poppers. Again, I deliberately don't practice with this pistol. The last time I used it was in April of 2019, and this match was held in February of 2020. I get lucky on this portion, and I neutralize the last target with my last round out of the magazine, so I don't have to reload.
Rifle or hand on tire?
Something's got to touch the tire. 2 shots each target.
So the rifle portion of the stage isn't really remarkable, but I'll take this moment to talk about the things I don't like about shooting retro division, is that using non-ambi controls, when I'm used to using ambi controls on my modern ARs, and shooting a GI trigger versus using a 4 to 4.5 pound match trigger really sucks. Obviously I can make the hits, but all those things make using the rifle that much easier, and I feel like when I'm using a retro gun that I have to put in more work to accomplish the same result. Something else you'll notice about my armored division run versus this one is, having watched other people shoot the stage, again we were shooting first during the staff match for this stage, is that my shooting positions on these tires changes to be more effective. On the pistol portion of the stage, I also gained some knowledge from watching other people shoot. Kneeling and supporting the shield on the ground was much more stable. And you can see how much easier it was to do that from both a stability standpoint and using the red dot on my pistol that I'm accustomed to makes shooting from weird angles much more easy. Also, clearly having the Derp Grew standard bearer follow me through the stage gave me a plus 10% to marksmanship as well. The cadence of my shots is a lot faster with my tuned competition rifle. I don't have to wait for it to stabilize quite as long, and sending the second shot with the match trigger is much easier. Here's another place where watching other shooters benefited me. I saw that going prone through the tires actually worked. It was a more stable position, less misses, so I did opt to go prone for both of these engagements. Shooting retro division definitely makes me appreciate how much better all my modern equipment is versus those firearms configured as they were in the 80s. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but there's been a lot of advances, and every one of those incremental advancements makes it that much easier to perform better with the same skill level. In retro light, I'm 3rd place on this stage. In armored, I'm 4th place on this stage. In the overalls, I'm 5th with my armored division run and 16th with my retro light division run. On this stage, unfortunately, I only have my armored plus P division run. This was my first stage of day 2 of the armored and scout division match. After engaging the pistol targets, the shooter has to carry the mortar tube or rocket launcher, whatever the heck it's supposed to be, back through the series of trenches. One of the concerns on the stage is keeping your rifle downrange as you advance uprange. Once the rifle has been loaded in this trench, the 180 now applies. Notice how I hand it off and keep it pointed downrange as I run uprange. And this is the final shooting position here. I was 21st in retro light on this stage, and I was 9th in armored on this stage. In the overalls, I was 20th with my armored plus P division run and 84th with my retro light run. This stage begins with the shooter crawling under 2 tank traps, and once they've done that, they will engage some auto poppers at about 75 yards from the crest of the hill. A lot of people really got hung up on these tank traps, depending on their gear and their setup, but if you went belly full to the ground and pulled yourself forward with your hands and elbows, I don't think it was really that difficult. Now with the auto poppers neutralized, the stage becomes an iron cross drill. The shooter has to engage the steel targets with 2 hits each from each of the cones. This is a stage where I think irons would have been definitively faster. The transitions across the relatively short range and each reacquisition of the sight eats up time. And with 7 total engagements from the iron cross, that becomes quite a bit of time added. Once you see this compared to my armored plus P run using the red dot, it's very noticeable how much faster using the red dot is versus using the magnified optic with limited eye relief. Crawling under the tank traps with all my gear on in armored division really wasn't that much harder than my retro light run. Most of my pouches are on the front of my body, so going belly down all the way, they weren't available to be caught on any part of the tank trap. And here is the one position at the match where I actually deployed my bipod and shot from it. The auto popper rack at 75 yards is really easy shooting from a supported position here.
4, 5. 2 hits. 2 hits. Double double taps on 2 targets. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Go left. You gotta go left. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 2.
Something else to think about is misses are of less consequence with this rifle with a red dot than the 723 with the 4X scope. The recovery is almost insignificant compared to the other.
1, 2, 1, 2. Unload and show clear.
In retro light, I'm 4th on this stage. I'm 7th in Armored Plus P. In the overalls, I'm 14th with the Armored Division run and 42nd with the Retro run. On this stage, the shooter begins engaging the Mini-Mo target at 20 yards, both hands or freestyle. Once they've accomplished this, they will move forward and engage it strong hand only from 15 yards, shooting the chest to knock the head up, then shooting the head back down. And then from this final position of 10 yards, they will do it support hand only. And this is where my lack of proficiency and training with the 226 shooting it support hand only really becomes apparent. I'm going to burn through an entire magazine being unable to actuate the Mini-Mo. It's really a matter of the fact I don't practice with this gun at all, particularly support hand only. And the trigger pull being much different than the Glocks I shoot all the time makes this a very challenging presentation for me. Unfortunately, on this stage, I don't have my video of my Armored Plus P Division run for comparison, but the pistol portion using my red dot Glock, which I'm very familiar with and taking advantages of the red dot, was significantly faster, almost entirely on the pistol portion of the stage. From this position, there's a steel target with the center cutout representing an armor plate. The shooter must get 2 hits on it from each of these X's.
Head! Head!
Same thing from around this barricade as well. The shooter now clears their rifle and has to climb to the top of the Connex and engage the targets downrange in an alternating pattern through the T-box on this prop. The higher bore offset of the optic attached to the top of the carry handle meant that I needed to engage through the center portion of the T only. If I tried to use the thinner portions like the arms of the T, I wouldn't be able to get a sight picture at those positions. Like my barrel could push through, but I wouldn't have a clear image through the scope. So what you're seeing is I have to shift my body back and forth for each engagement, whereas doing this stage with a red dot was much easier because I didn't have to shift my body nearly as much. I could just move the rifle back and forth and still see through it and engage the targets.
7. 8.
I'm 11th in retro light on this stage. In armored, I am 6th. In the overalls, I'm 12th with my armored division run, and I'm 73rd with my retro light division run. In the final results, I was 2nd in retro light division, which was frankly better than I expected. Congrats to Quan Watson on winning the division. He completed the match despite sustaining a torn hamstring on one of the stages. So, absolute mad lad. Very well done. He smoked all of us. In Armored Plus P division, I was 6th. Congrats to Zach Smith on first place, blowing us all away. John Stoner was solid in 2nd place, and Brian Nelson, who helped us run the match from the Southern Utah Practical Shooting Range and Tactical Performance Center, was 3rd in Armored Division. Shout out to my KE Arms shooting teammate, Jordan Henderson, for placing 4th, and TJ Masachi from We Plead the Second placed 5th. In the overalls, I was 9th with my Armored Division run and 20th with my Retro Light Division run. I'm entirely happy with my results from Desert Brutality 2020. Anyone who thinks you get an advantage by running a match is frankly crazy. It is impossible to shoot your best match while you are running a match. So in that regard, the fact I went into this already exhausted from the preparations for SHOT Show 2020, then setting up the match, and then shooting it twice, I frankly did better than I expected, and performing the way I did, well exhausted and stressed with everything going on, is pretty darn good in my opinion. There's always room for improvement. There's things I'd definitely like to do better next time, but all things considered, I think it went as well as it could for me personally at the event. So as a match director, here are the stats that really matter. We started with 217 registered shooters, 211 showed up, 200 completed the match. We had 60 DQs and several dropouts for physical injuries and other reasons, but everything ran on schedule and awards and prizes were done on time. Part of that success was my logistical planning and preparation, but an even larger part of that was the quality range officers we had, making sure everything ran on time and keeping the squads flowing, and all the competitors from Derp Crew who showed up ahead of the match and helped us set up the stages and make sure everything was ready to go during the staff match. Another big thank you to Brian Nelson and Madison from SUPS and Tactical Performance Center for helping us make sure practice score worked properly and with logistical support during the match. Also, thank you to the Compass Training AZ Center that hosted the match this year. They were a very easy facility to work with, very accommodating, and we will be back there with other events in the future. And finally, thank you to all the sponsors who helped support the match and make it possible, especially Mike Kenny from KE Arms, my boss. We were up there the weekend before the match, and Mike was running a Bobcat for 2 days straight, building up the berms and reconfiguring the range, digging trenches to improve the match experience for everyone. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this excessively long match video. Come back again for more match and multi-gun competition content.